Maya, I think we're live. Good to see you today.
Really good to be here. Yeah, I'm so excited. I've been thinking this morning about like how kind of imposter syndrome like tells me I shouldn't be here. And and thinking back on this topic, I was like, no, this is like exactly where I think I need to be to like talk about this, how I would want to hear about it, especially as a
Mhm.
new mom.
Absolutely. Maya, you're like, I love it because we all experience imposter syndrome. So I appreciate you sharing that. Um, but I can't think of a better, like, you're one of my favorite people to talk to about mindfulness and especially with like this approach that we're going to be sharing. So I think you're in the right place and I'm glad you're here. So I'll just share for anybody watching who's coming in live or catching the recording. Um, I am Courtney Ashworth. I am a functional health coach. I coach women in connecting with their identity and their intuition as they navigate major life transitions such as motherhood. I've been talking all month long in hopes of preparing both myself, really having these conversations for me, and also for anyone tuning in to kind of just refresh the things that we need to do to take care of ourselves, to ease into fall with a bit more intention, as this tends to be a busier season or time of the year. And I know I'm already feeling that in my house, and this has been extremely supportive. And today is our last kind of in that whole series to close it out with Maya. I have joining me today to talk about mindfulness and how we can really tune into a state of presence to support really whatever you have going on in life, but specifically, I know Maya and I are both mamas to young ones, so really working with kids and being mindful. So Maya, I will read your kind of official bio that you sent, and then you can add anything if you'd like. So Maya is an ADAPT certified coach who helps her clients achieve growth and well-being from a place of self-love, and a NASM certified personal trainer specializing in mobility, pre and postnatal strength and creative movement. She is also the new mama of an almost 1-year-old baby, Lucas, who was born at her home in New York City in September 2021. It's so exciting. Lucas is almost a year. And I also just want to share, Maya, and I'm going to let you speak, but I just think it's so incredible. I've always admired your ability to, so you became pregnant during our ADAPT functional health coach training program, and your fortitude to really just kind of hold space for both transitions in your life of like restructuring your business and becoming a health coach while also going through that pregnancy phase and becoming a mom. I think that's really beautiful that you were able to connect those. So is there anything you would like to share to your bio, or perhaps sharing what you're looking forward to this fall?
Wow. Those are two really great questions. I guess I have been thinking a lot about like my mindfulness journey and kind of how it started and like how long have I been practicing. Um, and I don't really remember like how meditation and mindfulness practice came into my life, but it's definitely been, I'm going to say, more than 7 years, probably around 10, and came to me through various friends and really trusted, um, not even so much mentors, but really friends. I think friends brought meditation and mindfulness into my life. And I think that's just interesting because sometimes friends can be such amazing teachers and resources. And I also think it's really worth noting, and we learned this in our coach training, that often there's so much to be learned from someone who's just a little bit ahead of you on the path. And we tend to kind of compare ourselves with people who are like where we want to be in years, who've already been at it for years. And they can really almost be a little bit out of touch with that kind of beginner mind, or not even beginner, but like if you just imagine like the path, that sometimes it's really nice to learn from people who are just a little bit ahead of you on the path, because it's very fresh for them what it feels like to be where you are, wherever that is, whether it be at the beginning of the path or the middle or whatever. So I would say that in terms of my mindfulness journey, and in terms of what I'm looking forward to this season, it's very relevant to
pause you there and just I just want to reflect on that, because I think you touched on some important things of really it sounds like, so you're sharing that your friends are the ones who really brought you to meditation, and or mindfulness in general, and maybe you weren't even really aware of it at the time. Like it wasn't like oh, somebody told me to do this, so I started doing it and everything changed. Sounds like this
or some master teacher. I do feel like I have master teachers in my life, and we can talk about resources, but the people who really brought mindfulness, who kind of made me aware of it and got me curious about actually starting, were friends, not master teachers.
And I think the same is so true with motherhood, not to go off on a tangent, but you can really compare it of like, it's really, I found a lot of great information from my own mother and grandmother and aunts who were able to share with me about motherhood, how they experienced it. But you learn so much from like new moms, friends that just, it's so fresh. Like this is what's going on right now. And I think that's really accurate, or it's a good comparison with meditation of learning from somebody who's just started, that they can really understand like these are the challenges that you're going to have in the beginning. And this is, you can kind of learn together. So cool. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. What are you looking forward to this fall?
Well, as you know, I've been on a really epic journey of several moves from house to house. And I'm at the end of kind of a workcation vacation in British Columbia right now. But as of Saturday, I'll be back in New York City and like hitting the ground running to move out of an apartment that we just moved into at the beginning of July. And, so another huge move and transition. It's also a holiday weekend. So I have a lot of dread is what I'm saying. I'm having a lot of dread about this like huge logistical challenge. And what I'm looking forward to is, hopefully being able to kind of settle in and restart in another new space. And I guess I'm also looking forward to Lucas's first birthday, which is the 10th, coming up really soon. And I guess using this moment with you to just kind of like set that intention that I'm going to hold space to celebrate that day, regardless of the craziness of moving, which is going to be going on at the same time.
Yes, so much. So you have like an especially busy fall this year, especially with the moves. It's been a busy summer, and now there's going to be hopefully some settling in the near future.
I really hope so. Yeah.
But I love that intention that you set of really just being able to soak in that celebration of your baby's 1-year birthday. That's super exciting. And I think this conversation goes hand in hand with that, because you and I both know that it's just so much easier to kind of take the pressure off of life's like stressors and realities by having that consistent mindfulness practice. So you're able to tune into life as it's happening with you and what you want to experience and enjoy.
Yeah.
So because I know we both have a lot to say on this topic, I thought it would be interesting if we kind of set an intention between you and I at the top of this conversation of like, what do we want to walk away with from this conversation, or like, what do we want viewers tuning in to be able to walk away with?
Ooh. I guess the thing that I've been thinking about is how mindfulness can be, or I think has become, a very intimidating word, and a word that can also conjure sort of a very specific image. And for myself, as a person who can be very self-critical, and I think a lot of us can be very self-critical, it's really important to just keep busting that open and saying, what is mindfulness for me? What is the point of mindfulness for me? And, how can I really make it work for me in my life? What does that look like? What do I need to do? Not even need, but like, what are the possibilities? Like, what are the possibilities to make this really serve my life? And so I guess my intention would be to sort of offer some perspective, like offer my experience with that, and also remind myself that, that is the work, that it is about living better, not about practicing mindfulness better. Like we talked about this a little bit earlier this week.
Yeah.
What is the point of this, especially as a busy person and a person who as a mama is like has a very busy, very in demand, not a lot of time by myself, and also like really wanting to model to be a role model for my child. And that's an important part of why I want to practice mindfulness, both to like savor my life with my baby and also to model the kind of humanity that I want him to have in his life and become.
So as an intention, we're really wanting to both make mindfulness more accessible and like not so daunting of this, like, oh, you have to do it this set way. So making it a bit more accessible for folks, and as a reminder for ourselves, because like you shared, both of us have this, can fall into that perfectionist trap of like needing it to be a certain thing. So both that and also really connecting with the why, like why are we practicing in the first place? And I think that's important really for any habit, but particularly for mindfulness, of that's the only way that you're going to sustain it or want to, is really knowing why you're practicing. I found that to be true for me when it was a challenge or something where I'm, putting this pressure on myself. Oh, I have to meditate every day. I have to do it this way. I can quickly fall off from that. And then when I am doing it for more of a personal intention, something like you shared of wanting to have a better experience for yourself with your son and model that behavior for him to be able to do that in his own life, that makes it have so much more meaning, and it feels easier just to get started when you have that meaning connected to it. So yeah, thank you for that. Anything you'd like to add as far as intention setting for today?
Well, I was just sort of realizing that I wouldn't mind like taking a breath right now. Just saying like,
Yeah.
okay, let's like settle into this intention a little bit. And for me, breathing, especially this year, has been a huge part of what mindfulness looks like. And so if you're open, we could just take a breath.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love that, Maya. Great suggestion. Cool. What does that look like for you? Do you want to maybe guide something or just take a moment of silence? What would feel good?
I can guide something. So for me to land in my body, I'm noticing where my body's contacting another surface. For me, that starts with my feet. I'm standing, feeling the ground under me. And I want to bring myself over that anchor. So I'm adjusting to feel a little more balanced over my feet, might be over your seat if you're sitting. I'm really feeling the crown of my head above that anchor point, above that grounded point. And as I breathe, I'm bringing my attention to the space around my heart, like my rib cage, and letting it expand with my inhale in all the directions, like a expanding oval. Feeling my ribs open away from each other. And then shift back. Down and closed slightly with my exhale. And I notice that I already feel a huge change in my body. I feel a lot less fluttery, a little more grounded. And that's nice for me right now.
Thank you so much for that, Maya. I'm definitely feeling more grounded as well. Thank you. I want to make an observation, and then I think that this kind of plays into a question that I think comes up a lot that we've already hinted around. And that is that, while you were just guiding that, you were really practicing as well. And I noticed you were practicing mostly with your eyes open, perhaps open the whole time, while my eyes were shut. And so that's really just noticing that you can practice one way or the other, sitting, standing, lying down, eyes shut, eyes open, really whatever feels most comfortable. And so we touched on that earlier of needing meditation to look a certain way. What is the correct or best way to do this? What are the benefits of closing your eyes versus opening your eyes? And I think that's one thing that is really the biggest barrier for folks to just start playing with it, is feeling this sort of it's an imposter syndrome. It's this daunting sense that I'm doing this all wrong. What would you say to that, Maya?
Well, I just want to scoop up what you just said, which was playing with it. That it's a barrier for folks to start playing with it. And what if it were playful? What if this were something that were playful instead of so serious and so important, even that there's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, if you do it, you're doing it wrong. And if you don't do it, then that's wrong. And I am the first to fall into that mindset. That is utterly from my own experience. And so that becomes part of the practice, is like, okay, how can I hold this a lot more lightly? And then just start layering things that work for me. And yeah, maybe I'll just leave it at that, because I'm sure we'll get into some specific examples. I want to jump into examples, but yeah, I'll just leave it at that for the moment.
Yeah. I like the word that you use there too, of layering. Like, what about this felt right, and how can I continue that, and what can I add to it or play off from that? Really important. So what is the correct way to meditate?
Oh, what is the correct way? There are moments I've had moments in the last few years of my life where a seated, disciplined practice, kind of the way, what I think of the stereotypical meditation practice, using the technique of mindfulness or presence, being present, paying attention, where that has really served me. And to be specific, right at the beginning of the pandemic. At the beginning of the pandemic, when my kind of days started all looking really similar, another time in a similar sense, actually, when I was working at a restaurant and I worked a really early morning shift. So I was waking up really early every single day, and my mornings looked exactly the same. I had the same preparation, putting a disciplined, I'm going to sit for X amount of time with my timer or with my app. I'm going to sit cross-legged. I'm going to close my eyes. Or I've also practiced the Shambhala style with eyes open, but whatever, kind of the way that whomever told me, and that's what the practice looked like. And that has felt awesome. And it's been very rewarding to sort of track the days and say, okay, I've done it for X number of days in a row, or to have that real structured approach. And that's been wonderful. And to acknowledge that, like, as the seasons have shifted in my life, that approach has just not felt right. And so I've been able to like let it go and shift into something else. And for me, that is the correct way to practice mindfulness, to be able to hold the thread and let it be a different thread at different times. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think what you and I have both heard or learned from teachers is it's this practice of bringing your attention back to your breath. That is the meditation, bringing your attention back to whatever is your focal point, if that's your breath or there's other points that you can use as you guided us, using that anchor where your body is touching the ground. So moving aside whatever distraction pops in and then coming back to it, and we'll get into more specifics with that. But it sounds like you're really saying that is, even in a bigger perspective, the actual continuous practice over time of meditation is really bringing your attention to what you're needing in this season. Practicing really in a way that feels correct for what you're needing right now and not needing it to be something else. Would you agree?
Yes. Yes.
What has mindfulness looked like for you recently? I wanted to ask really just over the past year since becoming a mom, but I'm sure that that's changed throughout the year too. So maybe just recently in this time as a mom of an almost 1-year-old, with so much transition going on in your life, what has mindfulness looked like for you lately?
There are a few kind of pillars of my practice. And again, I just use this, like, I hate to get hung up on words like practice. So I'm just going to use the word practice, but if that word triggers you, or not you, but if one is wanting a different word, use a different word. I think for me, that's part of my like holding it lightly, is the playing with the words. Like, what is the word? So in broad strokes, what my practice has looked like recently has been a lot of breathing. So that means breathing. I've been paying attention to my breath when I have the baby carrier on. I've been paying attention to my breath when I'm doing different kinds of movement or exercise. I've been paying attention to my breath as it relates to my posture when I'm standing or when I'm sitting. So that's a big pillar. Being in the moment, and for me right now, it's kind of twofold. One is like being with my baby, and one is like being in nature. So being in nature and being with my baby have been moments that sort of remind me to land. It's like, okay, I'm going out on a walk, or I'm even just like looking out the window. Like last night, one of our many middle of the night wake ups, I just looked out the window at the stars because I'm somewhere where I can see stars right now. And even, that was just like a tiny moment. Mm-hmm. But can I allow that moment? I'm allowing that to be part of what I'm calling my mindfulness practice. Just seeing the stars in that moment. And again, like same thing with my baby. Like when I see like the dimples in his fingers or like his feet, that there's just this moment of acknowledging that, like landing in that moment, even if it's the tiniest little moment. So that's been another pillar. Putting my phone or computer down has been another. It's like it's really important to me, but really challenging for me right now at the same time. And so again, just like having that moment of, I am going to step away. I'm going to walk away from my phone. I'm going to intentionally leave it somewhere, turn it off, whatever. And having like a tech-free time. And yeah, like right now, I would say those are sort of the pillars.
I love everything that you shared. I really noticed that what you're talking about is really embodying the moment that you're in. So you touched on like being on your phone physically less, but also like minimizing distractions from your brain. Like when you mentioned looking at the stars, I mean, that's wonderful to live somewhere where you can see stars. And a lot of times it's something that we look at and don't really acknowledge or pay attention to. And same is true with holding our baby. Like we've all had moments where you're holding your baby and your brain is not there. You are thinking about what's for dinner or what else needs to be done or some stressful conversation, like just holding your baby and there's stress here that's not in that moment. And so what you're talking about is really being in the moment and acknowledging what's there and appreciating how that makes you feel, what the sensations are for you in that moment.
Yes. Yes. And to build on that, I mentioned like that not right now because I'm in like the most beautiful place you could possibly imagine, like looking out over the ocean and seeing the stars in the middle of the night. But not too long ago, you know, it was another one of the more stressful, crazy moments of this stressful, crazy year of having an infant, you know, a child under 1. And there has been a lot of that acknowledgement of what is in a negative way this year. Like, I feel completely freaked out. I feel panic. I feel mom rage. Mom rage has sort of started to become more of a theme of sort of put aside the exhaustion and pain, like actual physical pain. I went through a really terrible breast infection right after Lucas was born. Not to mention labor itself. I mean, landing in those really negative or negative, like things we perceive as being negative, and acknowledging them. And that's part of mindfulness as well. Like, it is not about, oh, everything's just beautiful and peachy, or I'm only going to pay attention to the moments that are beautiful and peachy. And in the other moments, I'm going to be distracting myself. Because a lot of times if I'm on my phone or if I'm not landed in my body, it is because I'm trying to like escape. And that's smart. Like that we do that for a reason. All these things are such valid strategies to avoid not so much the negative sensation, but the stories around it. You know, one of the things that I really noticed that was the absolute worst thing about both labor and this breast infection is the fear that it would go on forever, that not being able to see the end, that I'm afraid this pain will never be over. And that is like a story, right? It's a story that you even know isn't true. Because of course the baby's going to be born eventually, or of course I'm not going to be infected forever. Like, it did go on for a long time. But in order to like escape those stories and narratives, we have all these strategies. And so, you know, coming back and just trying to kind of really get close to like what really, really is. And we can talk more about that because there are times when that might not serve. So again, coming back to like, is it helpful to come back and let myself notice that I'm escaping? What might be my reason for trying to escape? And can I be gentle with myself about that and sort of make a decision about what I want? Do I want to stay scrolling Instagram right now? Or is there something else that I would prefer to be doing? Yeah, that was a lot.
No, that was a lot and so powerful. I think that is part of the myth around mindfulness that you talked about at the top, of like really busting through that, of this picture of just, it's all enjoyment. Like once I start practicing mindfulness, I'm just going to enjoy the heck out of life more. It's all going to be more beautiful and rainbows. And that's just not true. And I think that was when I really came to understand mindfulness at a deeper level, as well as once you're able to stay present with those more negative emotions, and noticing how you're feeling. And my strategy a lot of times, yes, of course, distraction of like scrolling through social media or numbing out, like binging on Netflix or sugar, whatever. And I also tend to like overanalyze the problem. Like, how can I make this infection go away faster? How can I, like, what needs to happen to solve this problem? And instead it's, and I think that there's value in both, right? Like there is a point in time where it's like, okay, I do need this in this moment. I need to research this problem that I'm having for the next 30 minutes and find out what knowledge is out there that I can take in. Or perhaps you do need that strategy of numbing out. I'm going to numb out in this way, and it's for this purpose. And then there's also that really checking in with the experience and really feeling it and allowing yourself to feel the pain. And I think a big part of being mindful with it is not judging it. I think you mentioned that, but just to highlight, and that's why we both are shying away from using that word negative again, because holding that emotion without calling it negative and just noticing, like, I'm struggling. I'm in pain, and not judging that as one way that it's not right or wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. The image that's coming to me is this idea of like, if we're talking about mindfulness, like the overall goal of mindfulness is to be able to live more fully, like to live better. And I think this is totally a choice, right? You can choose that this might be your better and this might not be your better, and that's fine. Like, it's like you said about making the choice to numb out. You know, people have things going on in their lives that are so challenging, like beyond what I think I could imagine. And when I think about numbing out as a strategy, of course you want to numb out, you know, and the great, you know, paradox, everything's always like both and better might look like opening up to this spectrum of emotion, you know, that it's not like good positive emotions on negative emotions, but just that the more you can open, the more of both you get to experience, that there's this broadening of the full spectrum of what you get to experience. And it goes both directions, right? Like you don't get to just go, oh, I'm broadening this direction only. You know, it's like all of it. And yeah, I mean, I think I want all of it. There might be moments when I'm kind of opting for numbing. And we have so many great tools in our world right now for numbing. Like numbing can be so fun. And when I really like come back to like who I want to be, and again, like who I want to model for my son, I want all of it. I want to like be opening that spectrum of possibility. And that's a really big part of my mindfulness practice, especially because of the way it makes me relate to others. If I can open to more, then I can be more empathetic. I can be more connected. I can be more of service in my relationships, more in tune in my relationships. That's what I want, you know? Mm-hmm. That's the why for mindfulness for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I can relate to that. It's creating more space for your ability to relate to yourself and how you're dealing with life, with your experience of life, and then also how you're relating to others and their experience. We could go on and on. I really want to touch on, I know that you have some really interesting, like just simple techniques for accessing this. We've talked kind of in general about, how mindfulness can really just being in the moment, being present in the moment. But for somebody who's really never done that before, and it's kind of like, how do you get started, I guess is what I'm asking. If you want to share some techniques that people can start. I know you do a lot with incorporating the body and your senses and pleasure. So if you could share a couple practices that people can start to play with.
Yeah. Okay. So there's kind of two ways I could go with this. So I'm just going to ask, do you want to hear some kind of potential starting points? Like, your starting point could look like this or like this, like some ideas, brainstorming, or more like different techniques I've actually tried and what those look like. Like what you might actually do.
Yeah, let's do what's calling to you more.
Well, let me start. I think this is kind of the more coach approach, honestly. And I think it's an interesting one. So I'm feeling drawn, I guess, to go kind of like, how might you even decide where you want to start? For example, I am somebody who loves to learn. Like, learner is one of my top strengths. And so researching and learning and like listening to teachers is a very effective way for me to learn. I mean, for me to get motivated to do something that gets me excited. So if I decide, okay, if I keep the learning kind of front and center for me about mindfulness, it makes me want to do it more because I am very motivated by learning. And a couple others that really work very effectively for me in terms of just like, if I want a new practice in my life, I'm going to do this. It's connecting with other people. So research and learning, getting other people involved, and invest a little bit of investment. So for me, I have like not made any huge significant investments, but purchasing, like using my money to like set my intention has been really effective for me. So now as a coach, having learned those things about myself, I can look back and see, oh, look what I did. I went to a class because I know I work better with, well, now I know I work better with people. I'm a relator. I went to a class and that really worked well. I am a learner, and I want to research and hear about the benefits. So I listen to podcasts obsessively about the benefits and keep that front and center. I'm motivated by investing money. Like, I know that if I pay for something, I'm much more likely to actually do it. That's not the case for everyone. So if you can kind of look at, say mindfulness is something you want to incorporate in your life. If you can look at yourself and see what works for you in terms of motivating, those are just a couple of avenues that I mentioned. That could be, there's a good chance that could work in this area too, in mindfulness area too. So hopefully that made sense.
That made a lot of sense. I love how you broke that down. So that was very coach hat of you, of really encouraging folks to tune into what is the best way that's going to motivate them. How, like, really asking, how am I going to build this as a habit that's sustainable, that is actually making my life better and not more stressful? And for you, you talked about, I have a lot of the same ways of feeling motivated. Like, it's definitely, I love to learn. So if I want to start something, I need to learn. I just have to soak up all that I can about it. And then really connecting with others. I love having like friends, or making friends with people who are along the same path and wanting to do the same thing. And then of course that investment piece. anytime I think that money speaks. So anytime that you're putting your money, your value into something, you're going to look to get more out of it. So I think those are great avenues. And I'm sure people can think of other ones as well that would help them. Something that's coming up for me is that question, and I personally vary around this, but it's that question of like tracking. And you mentioned that earlier, but if I'm starting to build a new habit, it is helpful for me to kind of track my progress and pay attention to how many times a week am I practicing, and what did that look like? What did it feel like? Making those types of observations is really helpful for me in the beginning. So again, for people to just ask themselves if that's something that would help them. And it can also add stress. Like, it doesn't work for everybody. That can also create this sense of like, it's something else I have to do.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Going, I think, to the other side of your question, like what might be some different practices, I think you're just right on with like, is using a tracker or doing it at the same time, kind of a set it and forget it technique, going to be effective for me? Or is something a little bit more flexible and a little bit more, maybe looks different every day, or it's a different time every day? Is that more going to serve me? Or for me, it's been a little of both. And that embracing that flexibility part, that it doesn't always have to look the same. And then you have to layer the self-compassion over that for me, because I tend to give myself more gold stars when it looks like discipline and it looks like it's the same every day, because that's how I originally was told that meditation works. And then for me, I was lucky enough to like have someone kind of tell me that it was okay if it didn't look like that, that I respected as a teacher. And then that voice has become more and more my own voice. It needed to come from outside first. For me, it was not only, it's okay if it doesn't always look the same, but it was like, if your goal is a more flowy, fluid, feminine approach, maybe you could try this. And that was like, oh yes, that's what I want, so I could kind of go that direction with the permission of an authority, which is often something that I feel like I need. Again, just knowing myself. And it could be you're the total opposite, and like freedom and independence are your thing, and you can tap into that inner voice. Anyway, that's kind of a whole other tangent, but I will say that, again, for me, if I look now at my ability to have the flexibility and kind of tap into a mindfulness place in a little bit of a spontaneous way that isn't structured, is not tracked, I don't have any reminders on my phone or anything, nothing's telling me to do it, I have developed it as a habit. And the reason I think that I did, like I said, I've been having this as part of my life for probably about 10 years. And I do think that the discipline and it being something that I really sat down and practiced and did and tracked and had teachers and used apps, I think that really, for me, played into it becoming a little bit of a habit at this point. I don't know that I would have been able to have it in this kind of flowy, flexible way back when I first started practicing.
I'm glad you shared that, because I was going to ask you your opinion, because I agree with what you're sharing. I kind of go back and forth with both right now as well, where it's like it's like week to week. Like some weeks I know, like, okay, I need to make sure like I'm getting my butt on the ground on a pillow every day, and I'm going to spend, however X amount of time, and it's going to be very disciplined. And then I also have weeks where that doesn't feel good, and like that's not what I'm needing. And so then it's more of that flowy, how can I just incorporate more presence, slow down more, and get to that more feminine way of being, where it's like, no, this week I'm really just going to like hand wash my dishes and take my time doing it, and notice how the water feels, and really just be present in each moment to moment. And I'm thinking one way, it sounds like we both agree that there kind of has to be both in the beginning where you're spending time building the habit. I'm thinking one way that could also work is having a cue. So sort of that like just picking something. And you mentioned holding the baby, so that can be a good one. Okay, for today, I'm going to experiment with every time I'm holding my baby, I'm going to pay attention to my breath and my posture and the sensation of, my baby touching my hand. And just leave it like that. Like, this is what I'm going to pay attention to today. And then that's sort of the cue each time that you pick up the baby, or it could be something else. Every time that I go to the bathroom, I'm going to take an extra 30 seconds and notice my breath. Every time that I do whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just thinking, you got my mind going, brainstorming of potential ways to kind of enter this.
Yeah. I think it's going to look different for anyone. Like even just thinking about my husband and the way that the way it looks when he's disciplined, with his practice, it's just so different from me. So, for anybody listening to this, like, just know that I don't want to say it'd be better to start tracking or it'd be better to start using an app. For me, that was better. Like, I used the Headspace app, which I think is fantastic. I haven't used it in a really long time though, so it's probably changed since I was using it. But that just really, really worked for me. And something else that I had noted was to like use pleasure. Like if you like an app, you like the interface, like for Headspace has a little animations. I love Andy's voice, like his accent, like it just really did it for me. I know people who love the Waking Up app. I've heard many, many people really enjoy the Waking Up app. And I've used only like the first few days, the free trial part. It didn't catch me in the same way, but I'm also not in a place where I really want to use an app. On the topic of apps, pleasure, if I think of like, ooh, what's going to make this good for me? What am I going to like? I've burned incense during, that moment. I've lit candles. Like I've realized I didn't want to burn incense or light candles. Like, what can make this good? What can make this feel good? I love Insight Timer because they have these really nice sounds. Like you can pick the bell sound of like the beginning and the end of the meditation. I like that so much better than just setting a timer on my phone. But both would be great strategies. Set a timer on your phone. Use a kitchen timer if you don't want to be on your phone. Get Insight Timer and use those like beautiful bell sounds, or they have chanting, they have, beats, they have tons of guided meditations. So this goes back like full circle to the beginning of the conversation about the playfulness. How can we play with it? Like what, I know now I just talked about like apps and tracking, but walking is like a huge way that I've been practicing mindfulness, especially with the baby, because I can layer all these things that are important to me can happen in one activity. So with my walk, I can be with my body and paying attention to my posture. I'm always like tweaking my walk and noticing my alignment. And alignment, that's taken some permission of like just letting myself go there in mindfulness. I want to be correcting or, being really intentional about my posture. And so what if I just let that be part of my practice rather than my mind having to be empty or something like that, I know we're like reaching the end of our time, but I just wanted to kind of give a little glimpse into a couple other things. So walking, like I said, leads me into this topic of stacking multiple things I want to do during my day in one activity. So I'm in nature, I'm connecting with my baby, I'm away from my phone, I'm working with my body, I'm paying attention to my alignment, and I'm going to breathe and really bring myself, even if it's just a few moments in my walk, that I'm like mindful. So that's just another, possibility to play with.
Yes, I love that. Everything that you shared, lots of resources. And I'm glad that you started bringing those in, because that was another question that I hadn't gotten to yet. And so, there's tons of, we live in a world today that there's like a new meditation app every day. Like we have access to so many teachers, and some of it's free or very affordable, and you can access resources to support you if that feels good. And I've played with several of those apps as well, and I'll include them in the notes for this. So we'll get together, Maya, and just kind of compile some resources that people can check out. And it's also like that term playfulness again is like experimenting with what works. Like just because you download an app and you didn't like that person's accent or it didn't feel right, that doesn't mean that meditation isn't for you or that mindfulness isn't for you. It's just that particular voice didn't do it for you today. Maybe it would later, or maybe a different style would. And so just, again, letting go of that judgment of needing it to be in a certain way. And walking is such a good one as well. And I have that similar just need to kind of correct how I'm walking or how I'm moving my body. And I hadn't thought about allowing that to be part of the practice before. So I appreciate you sharing that, Maya, of just letting that be what it is and welcoming that desire in. And I also want to acknowledge that creating that space to really just be mindful in the moment. I feel to me, that's really opening up everything else that you're talking about. So you're getting that, the steps in, you know, that's important for folks of having that movement. You're spending the time with baby, you've got your phone away. And I think by really tuning into it, you're getting more from the experience versus having your mind feel cluttered or distracted by other things going on in your world. So I think that was a cool one to end with, of just letting movement be a meditation or your whatever's happening in your world that you're enjoying. Yeah. Anything that you would like to add as we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that we haven't really talked about movement until now, because I think for both of us, movement has actually been a huge part of mindfulness. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking like of some of the guided meditations and my yoga teacher, my pre-baby, pre-pandemic yoga teacher, and the way that she would use alignment as a meditation, which I just find, for me, that is incredibly powerful because it just speaks my language on so many levels. Movement and nonlinearity, we've talked about, like this idea of sitting still and straight versus like a complete like fluidity, and like what if like my mindfulness is like busting that. I'm not going to do a linear movement practice right now. I'm going to completely move how I feel, even if that leaves me asymmetrical, which is really hard for me to like do an asymmetrical movement and just leave it and not like even it out on the other side. So again, just noticing, like paying attention.
Yeah, those are some of my favorite meditations, of really just allowing my body, like I feel relaxed when I'm like moving, and most of my meditations, there's like a lot of neck rolls because my neck is straight so much of the time when I'm not being mindful. So when I'm being mindful, I'm like, oh, it feels actually better to roll my neck around, to move my shoulders, to just kind of like, a lot of times I'm swaying, you know, and that's what feels good in my body. So yeah, movement is definitely part of it.
Yeah. So anyway, we can do a whole nother talk about movement sometime. But what I really want to end with is, like you said, that idea of like downloading an app and trying it for one day and it like not being for you, or whatever, like try this nonlinear movement that we're talking about, and maybe that's not for you. Coming back to like putting our coaching hats on, it's so key to acknowledge that in our world and our culture, we're so focused on the action phase of change, that we want to be in that action phase or in the maintenance phase, which is like the end phases of the 5 stages of change. And when we acknowledge like the preparation phase, or pre-contemplation, contemplation. There's these early phases of change that don't look like action yet. And they're part of it. They're so important. And so coming back to self-compassion, coming back to incorporating new habits, that's something to celebrate. Like having tried something and it didn't work, having tried something and then you forget to try it for the next week or the next month. That's okay. That's how we all are. That's how change works. And, then you can bring in some tools or work with somebody, those motivating, like we were talking about. Do you work better with friends? Do you work better with a calendar? Do you work better? What's going to work for you and make it work for you? That'll bring you to where you want to be. And then let me tell you, as a new mom, you will fall off the boat, you will fall off the wagon and have to start over. And I just really want to celebrate that as part of the path as well.
Yes. So much yes to that. Just noticing that it's going to take time. It's not something that you just, and that's really what you started with sharing too. It's not something that you just all of a sudden I'm able to meditate or I'm not. This isn't working for me. Same is true with any change that we're trying to make. You don't just go into a gym on your first day and you're the best one there.
You look cool. You look like you know what you're doing.
Right. Exactly. So thank you for that reminder and just encouraging. I know I need that reminder for myself all the time to bring self-compassion into it, and that I am still learning and will always be learning. And my practice will always be changing. And just letting that be okay and good, like letting that be good. I don't want it to be the same forever. So thank you for that, Maya. How can people get in touch with you? Where do you hang out at?
Oh man. I mean, honestly, the best way to find me is to email me, which you can do through my website, or basically my website is where you'll find info. I am occasionally on Instagram, more so these days. And my crazy last name through which you have to find me is Kaough. So my website is MayaKaough.com. And on Instagram, I'm Maya TKO. So same crazy name, but there's a T in there because somebody has the same name as me, amazingly. So you can find me there, and I've already posted some of my thoughts about this on Instagram this morning on my stories. I'll definitely share those or save those as a whatever it's called. You can tell I'm very Instagram savvy, but you can save it. So I'm going to do that. And, I'd be so happy. I'm like a resource queen. That's another thing that I really, really love doing is having and sharing resources. So I'd be more than happy to connect folks with any of the things we've mentioned or expound more on these thoughts. So feel free to reach out. Was that an acceptable way to say how to find me?
Yes, it was. And that's the perfect title for you, resource queen. Any question that I have, that I have ever brought to you, Maya, you're well, here are 4 different podcasts or books or ideas on this topic. Oh, and there's one more.
And there's one more. That is how my brain works.
I'm not quite as familiar with this one, but you could also check here, definitely just encyclopedia of resources for many things, but I would definitely say around mindfulness, movement, motherhood. You've shared so much information. And that's actually something that we didn't talk on either, is learning from people who are behind us, right? So we talked at the beginning of learning from people who are slightly ahead of you in a certain practice, whether that's motherhood or meditation or something else. And also folks who are slightly behind us, because I have a daughter that's older than you. I have stepchildren. that are older. So I've been physically a mother longer, and yet you've been able to teach me a lot about motherhood as well, as somebody who is newer to motherhood. But I think that we've both been mothers for longer than we've had children. I would say.
Mothering in the archetypal sense. Yeah. Yes. I think that's true. And thank you.
Yeah. And Maya also has a wonderful newsletter. So definitely, if you are an email person, I would highly encourage to check out, just reach out to Maya via email and get on her newsletter. I always look forward to seeing your messages. This whole coach approach, I feel like, is really what you bring into your newsletter as well. It sparks curiosity. It sparks my imagination and coming up with ideas. I always feel inspired from reading your messages.
Thank you.
Are you currently taking on clients? Do you have space to work with people in that way?
Oh, yes. That's a great question. So, yes, I am, especially not like right this second. As I mentioned, I'm about to have another big transition in my life in the next couple of weeks. But around mid-September, I will have another opening or two to work one-on-one with folks who are interested in coaching. And again, even if you don't want to be coached by me, that's such a huge commitment, but like, come talk to me about coaching. If you're curious and anything I've said has like spoken to you, like, I would love to just have a conversation. It doesn't need to be a commitment to coaching, but yeah, I definitely look me up, and I want to talk.
Awesome, Maya. Thanks for sharing that. And I will just share as we wrap up, I have some space to work with coaching clients one-on-one as well. And I also have space in my membership, which is the North Star Collective. And that is also a potential resource for meditation. For the membership, you receive once a month a guided meditation, if you like my accent or my style. I offer those meditations for my membership. And then there's also access to a community of women that are working on mindfulness, are working on wellness, and just experiencing life fully. We each have different areas where that's highlighted for us, but we are all supporting one another. And so that is the North Star Collective. You can reach out to me about that, or working one-on-one right now. And I'm mostly on Instagram, or I have a newsletter as well. And sometimes I'm on YouTube, like I have been all month. Any last thoughts, Maya?
I just really appreciate you setting this up. I'm really admiring your growth as a coach, and like working, creating this collective, creating a membership, like really looking at how you can serve, and, creating those spaces. And just really, really appreciate the time to be here with you talking too. It's just always so wonderful, Court. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to chat with you. And this has also been such a just experience of taking a beginner's mind and experimentation and playfulness as well. Just, I approach my business of how do I want to be with my business right now? And so the membership is feeling really good. This YouTube series was sort of an experiment. It has felt good. I'm still kind of like gathering my thoughts and feelings around it, but I think that's maybe one, if you agree with me, Maya, maybe that's one spot to kind of land on, to end with, of a benefit from mindfulness, is it brings a sense, having playfulness with your mindfulness practice brings a sense of playfulness into the rest of your life as well. And anything that you're doing, you can kind of look at it from a more, what if?
Yeah.
What if?
Yeah. Playfulness, openness, possibility, and presence, I think, is the last thing I would add. That if you play with being present, you get to be present. You get like what really is in that moment.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this was so much fun, Maya. Thank you very much for being here. I know we went over on time and we could totally have a whole other hour conversation on it, but thank you so much for taking your time, for being here, and for sharing your wisdom. I will link to you and your contact and website and whatever resources we come up with all in the show notes. So yeah, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maya. Bye.